Will the October surprise bring more SHTF style events our way? The October surprise is something that happens every election year, and we can expect something from both sides of the aisle to appear in October. So stick around for the rest of the video. We're going to talk about what those different expectations might be from each side of the aisle and how they're going to affect you when it comes to preparing for SHTF. Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper, and today we're going to talk about how the October surprise is on its way, and it's something we have to anticipate considering the fact that we're in an election year. An October surprise is something that happens every election year, and it's basically, let's give you the definition, any political event that is orchestrated or apparently orchestrated in the month of October to sway the results of an election. It basically is some kind of a surprise that nobody was expecting to try to sway voters to go in one direction or the other. But we are in the year 2020, and because of all the volatility going on in the world today and everything else that we've been experiencing for the year of 2020, we have to be aware of what we should expect when it comes to that October surprise and how it might affect us as individuals. So if you're preparing for SHTF, you're worried about the election coming up, and 2020 has been a bad year for you, please hit the subscribe button below, because we're going to keep trying to prepare each other for what's to come and try our best to stay on top of all the things that could possibly occur, because we know that this year is going to keep giving us the gift of terrible news. So that being said, what can we expect? Well, first, I'm going to go over what we can expect from the current administration, because generally we can predict that pretty easily as it's time tested and there's a lot of history to back it. Then we'll talk about what the opposition is going to throw our way in October, and we'll just speculate on what those different scenarios could be, and then you can leave in the comments below if there's anything that you think might happen, or if you think I'm wrong about something, or if there's anything else that I missed that you think should be on the list of things that we should expect for October, okay? This October surprise is definitely going to cause a lot of calamity if it keeps going in the direction that everything else has so far this year. Okay, so for the current administration, what can we expect? What helps keep a president in office? What helps keep the elected officials who are already there in power? Well, these things have happened before, and we can expect to see them again, especially based on what we're dealing with right now. So one of the biggest things that I think could be an expectation for the October surprise is the release of some kind of a vaccine for the pandemic. Knowing that this is the miracle cure that everybody's been waiting for, and how that vaccine can lead to a reopening of the economy, is a way that the current administration can show leadership and can show that they are actually on top of trying to get ahead of this pandemic, and that they're going to save the planet with this vaccine that they have developed. So a great time to release that information is in October, right when people's minds are set on the election and how they're going to vote. And if you provide the miracle answer for the problem everybody's been dealing with all year, it's going to help you stay in power, because people are going to look at that and say, okay, they know what they're doing, thank God, okay? Something we should be aware of. The next thing I think that we should expect from the current administration is going to be some kind of an economic rebound, some kind of a stimulation of the economy that's going to make the stock market look much better than it actually is. Some kind of a stimulus program that's going to give people money, and something that's going to help the economy, at least in the short term, look like it's doing better than it was previously in the year. That gives people more confidence, that gives people more stability, and everybody's going to feel like, okay, things are getting better, I like the way things are going, so we're going to maintain with what we have right now because I don't want to change course. So that is something that could definitely happen, although when it comes to the economy, we'll talk about how the opposition will probably handle that just a little bit later in the video. Now, another thing that I think we can expect in October as a possibility for the October surprise is going to be high-level indictments. We've been hearing about indictments for a long time now when it relates to things like the deep state and everything else that we've all talked about for a long time, and these indictments have supposedly been sealed for years now, and we're waiting for those to be unsealed so we can see what those people are going to be indicted for and everything else related to that. And we've seen a lot of high-profile arrests in recent months, so we can expect some of these high-profile indictments to show up in October, which could cause some calamity, because if these people are revered by a large portion of the population as being immaculate, well, this whole thing is going to cause a lot of problems. And for the current administration, for what they know their demographic is after, those high-level indictments will show them that the promises that were made are going to be kept. So we can expect to see some of those appear in October, similar to some of the arrests we've already seen recently, okay? Another thing that we can expect to see in October that might be a possibility and has been speculated, and in my opinion possibly telegraphed, is a delay of the election due to the possibility of mail-in voter fraud. That could cause huge implications. And when we're talking about SHTF, when we're talking about unrest, civil unrest, violence in the streets of some sort, this could really push that over the edge, because if that really happens, a large portion of the country is going to say no. And they're going to get out there and they're going to do what it is they do best when it comes to showing that they disagree with the way things are going. And that's one of the ones I think we should be the most concerned about from the current administration when it comes to a possibility of an October surprise. If the election gets delayed, and if the whole mail-in voter fraud situation is real and there has to be some kind of a delay in order for things to be more properly executed, people will take to the streets and do a lot of things that we already know what to expect when it comes to those types of movements. And in an understandable way, because if you delay an election, it's going to verify how those people already feel about the current administration. Whether or not you agree with it, half the country is going to say this is our time. This is what we've been waiting for. So I am concerned about that one because it has been telegraphed. And a lot of times when you're talking about, especially someone who is extremely versed in marketing and understands how to market to a generalized population in order to cause a stir, that telegraph is so that you can set it up for a later date and then it's not as big of a surprise when it happens. Those things happen all the time. The media does it, Hollywood does it, everybody does it because it's how marketing works. And if you're going to telegraph something, you talk about it in the near future for something that's going to happen much later, so that way people aren't going to be so caught off guard when it actually becomes a possibility and the concept of it becomes more normal in their thought process. So, something we should be aware of. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't think so, but it has been telegraphed and it's something we should prepare for, and if it does happen, it will be calamitous. So, definitely something to watch out for. And the only other thing that I'm going to say could be a possible October surprise for the current administration to utilize as a way to make sure they maintain their votes is some kind of a foreign interference. So when I say that, I mean some kind of a conflict overseas or something that happens to a foreign ally that we have to respond to. We've already seen what happened in Lebanon recently. Who knows if that's going to be another situation that involves, foreign interaction. But what I'm saying is that people don't want to change leadership during conflict. And that has been proven time and time again throughout the course of history. So if some conflict was to magically arise in the month of October, it would solidify people's thought process of saying, I don't want to change leadership right now because we're in the middle of a conflict. And we know that tensions are high throughout the entire world right now, and that the possibility of conflict is already high. So the establishment of that conflict in October could be a big possibility. And when we talk about modern conflict on a global scale, SHTF preppers know that that's a big deal when it comes to being prepared and trying your best to maintain and survive during a situation like that. So those are my expectations for the current administration when it comes to an October surprise. And these are things that I'm preparing for now that you should probably prepare for as well, because we know at least something is going to happen in October. It always does every election year. There's always a surprise. And yes, other election years, has it been as reactive as something that we're expecting now? No, but we're also talking about the year 2020. So this is a different situation, and I think we can all agree on that. Now, opposition, they're going to have their own October surprise. This is about politics. This is a strategy, and this is something that everyone knows. You want to sway people's opinions right before they're going to mark that ballot. It's just like when you cram in your study guide for a test you're going to take the same day. It helps you pass the test because you've got all the information you need right before you took it. And that is exactly what the October surprise is. So what can we expect from the opposition, the people who want to change the current leadership, when it comes into our October surprise? Well, one of the biggest ones that I think we can expect that has a history behind it that could just be part of the deal regardless of whether or not the opposition is pushing it, but they definitely will utilize it as a way to remove the current leadership, is a market crash, okay? October has had a history of having terrible market crashes, okay? There was the bank panic of 1907, there was the stock market crash of 1929, there was Black Monday in 1987. October has that history to say, this is a month where things like that happen. Now, if you look through the entire history of Octobers in the stock market, generally they actually perform pretty well. But those certain dates in history where we've seen the entire stock market crash and fall happened in October. And we are in a terrible situation economically now. So could a market crash happen in October? Very easily. And would the opposition use that crash as a way to say that the current leadership is not performing when it comes to the economy and that they have a better plan? Of course they would. So can we expect a market crash in October? I think there's a reasonable expectation for that because we already expect this market to crash at some point. Why not in October where there's some historical reference points for us to see that that's happened before? So that is something that we should be looking at and preparing for. We might only have a couple more months of decent economic trade until things start to go really bad. So just something to keep in mind. Another thing that I think the opposition will utilize when it comes to an October surprise is going to be lockdowns and a resurgence of the pandemic. The more lockdowns could easily start happening come October. We're going to be in a fall month. The weather will start to be cooler. We'll start to enter cold season, flu season, all those things that we know are going to combine with the current pandemic to cause more and more problems. And if they can lock down more of the economy, and if they can lock down more people into their homes, and they can create this resurgence of the pandemic to the point where it allows them to keep people into a position that nobody really wants to be in, they're going to use that to their advantage in October. It's going to be for public safety. It's going to be for the current administration not performing when it comes to keeping the public safe. And they're going to utilize it as a way to ensure more mail-in ballots and whatnot. So I can expect to see more lockdowns come October, maybe even before October to have them previously established before we get that close. But I think it's definitely a possibility. We already know that this whole pandemic is going to become a resurgence of sorts regardless of what happens in the election. So they might as well use it, okay? So that's something I'm expecting, more lockdowns and the resurgence to climb and the response to it to be more harsh. So keep that in mind. Another thing that I think we can definitely expect from the opposition, and this is going to be related to a few different factors, is going to be more unrest in the streets, okay? More civil unrest throughout the country, and it's going to be due to a lot of the push propaganda leading up to the election, and we're going to see some serious unrest happening in October in order to try to sway public opinion. Now, a lot of people would say, well, that would backfire. Most people are against things like rioting and looting and everything else related to it. However, it still pushes their agenda, which is what they have to try to sell in order to win an election. So we can see more unrest happening in October, and they'll find a reason for that unrest. And what I mean by that is that they'll find some kind of an event, some kind of catalyst to ensure that that unrest continues through October or starts up again in October as a surprise. And you could expect, I don't wish for this and I don't hope that anything like this happens, but I think we could expect some kind of a large-scale event of sorts to occur in October to try to push more of that agenda and sway more public opinion. That is not in the sense of being a conspiracist, but what I'm saying is that if something does happen, it will be utilized to push that agenda and to try to get those people voted in. So keep your mind on that, because October has had issues with large-scale events before, and we know that this is the time for a surprise to try to get people aware of what everybody wants them to think. So that's something I'm expecting. Unrest will be escalated and ramped up during that time, and I expect there to be some kind of an event. I'm not going to say what kind, but some kind, okay? So the other thing I think that we can watch out for is they're going to use the idea of voter suppression as an accusational situation in October to show that the election system we currently have maybe has no integrity, because they're already pushing that concept. Yes, voters are being suppressed. They're trying to get rid of mail-in ballots. They're trying to get rid of absentee ballots. They're trying to keep people who aren't necessarily allowed to vote now from being able to vote, etc., etc., etc. So that being said, they're going to use that and they're going to find examples of that voter suppression in October. And they're going to let everybody know that your vote is not counting the way it's supposed to. And because of the pandemic and the conditions that have been met by the pandemic, they are able to get people to start voting earlier into October, and they're going to use some evidence of, mail-in ballots not being delivered or whatever else it might be to show that voter suppression is real and the current administration's in charge, so they're the ones who are at fault for it. I expect to see that as well. And the last thing I expect to see from the opposition is pushing the expectation that the results of the election will not be acknowledged, which is something that is already out there in the media, already out there in the news. And that's what's going to stir up the crowd. That's what's going to get the unrest moving, is saying that even if we win, even if the vote comes in and we win by a landslide, no one's going to acknowledge it. We have to hit the streets to make sure that we take our country back, because somebody who's in office right now is not going to acknowledge the fact that they lost. That propaganda is already out there. The media is pushing it, and it's going to get people stirred up. It's going to cause a lot of issues, and that unrest we've already talked about that we expect to see happen in October is going to escalate once they can establish that that's really what's going to happen, okay? And there has been the plan already laid out for that situation. We've already heard about it in the news, we've already heard about it in the media, and yes, do we have alternate media sources that most of us here use in order to not just follow the mainstream media to the grave? Of course we do. However, a large portion of the population still just follows mainstream media. So you should keep an eye on mainstream media, just because that's what these people are digesting, and this is what they're going to believe and be talked into during this time. So these are my expectations for October surprise. Do I think that there's going to be a surprise from both sides of the aisle? Of course. It's political strategy. They have to do something, okay, in order to sway voter opinion right before the election. However, what exact situation is it going to be? I can't say for sure. That's why I made a list of different things that I expect that it could be, and I'm preparing for each one of those things to be a possibility, so that way if one of them happens, I already had an idea of it occurring, and now I'm going to be more ready and more prepared for when that time comes. So hopefully this video helped you guys out to kind of get some ideas about what to expect in October. Hopefully you're preparing now, because if you're not preparing for what's going to happen during the election and after the election, start preparing for what's going to happen in October, and you're going to be ahead of the game, because holy crap, there's a lot of stuff that can happen, and I am trying my best to stay on top of it, but it's not easy because there's so many moving parts and things are constantly changing. So if you have any questions or you have anything else to add to the list of expectations for an October surprise, leave them in the comments below. I want you guys to stay on top of this information, and I want everybody to stay as prepared as possible. That's the whole point of the channel, and I appreciate every little bit of support that you guys give this channel. And I do have affiliate links and stuff like that in the description, as well as the pinned comment, and it's just my way of trying to support the channel and keep this stuff going, because honestly it takes a lot of time and effort, and I appreciate every single one of you that watch these videos, because without that it would be hard to have the motivation to keep things going, and I really, really do appreciate every single one of you. So that being said, anything else at all, leave it in the comments, and that's going to be it for Magic Prep.